Perfect. So I'll just introduce myself in case we haven't already met. If you are an existing client, my name's Joe and I work in our implementation team. So in implementation, we basically look after you in the first phase of your Voly experience. So right from starting off with our sales team to getting everything ready for you on the software, tailoring it to your needs and requirements, making sure you're trained on the system. And then when everything's up and ready, we then hand you over to your dedicated client relationship manager. So if you are an existing client, potentially we've met on an intro call when you first joined. So it's lovely to have you all on this webinar today.
Yep, my name's Georgia, so I'm one of the client trainers here at Voly. Been with the company for some time, so hopefully I'll have met most of you virtually. So I'll be answering as well some of the questions that are most asked. Of course, on the trainings is where quite often when a lot of the questions come up. So hopefully we'll have captured most of your burning questions on this session today.
Perfect. So I'm going to get started then, if that's okay. Like we said just before we do, if you do have any more questions, please just put them in the chat and we will answer them. Those that we can, we'll answer on the webinar. If it's anything a bit more private that you'd like us to answer on a call, we'd be more than happy to arrange a call for you after. So please put them in the chat and we'll answer at the end. Brilliant. So if we get started then, I am just going to go onto my dashboard. So here I am on our demo asset. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is a question we get a lot, which relates to budgets. So let's just recap. If we navigate to the budgets tab across the top here, what you've always had up to now is the ability to have monthly operational expenditure budget and the ability to edit that in the system. So when we've gone into the budgets tab, I've got the ability, here I am in my August 24, this month's budget. When I load that, I'm then able to edit that budgeted amount for all of those expenditure categories. And as you'll be aware, if you're an existing client, those expenditure categories are totally customizable, and we do that on a daily basis for our new clients. Now, the other benefit of using our budgets tab is the budget to actual report, which you can access from the reports tab. So here's one I prepared earlier. It's our budget to actual report, which I'm running for actually last month. Now, if I run that, just to give you again a quick recap, you've got the actual amount spent here. Let's take the engineering group, for example. That's the amount that I actually spent in that expenditure category group last month versus the amount I budgeted. I was hoping for quite a cheap month for engineering, and this is my variance. And I've always been able to add comments for that variance here. Now, what the question we get asked a lot is, well, how do I allocate things against a budget when actually they might not be monthly operational budget, but it's rather something different like a large refit or an owner's trip, for example, because by allocating that budget month on the transaction, you're then going to put it into that month on the budget to actual, for example. Now, a great new feature we've got, if we go back into our budgets tab, is the ability to have what we're going to call a named budget as opposed to a monthly budget. So now when you go here into the add budget button, you'll see we've got two types of budget in the drop down. The first one is the conventional monthly budget. Again, that's for your monthly operational expenditure, and that's what we've been using up to now in the system. And then you've also got our named budget. Now, in here, you could enter something in like Refit 2024. And when you click Create Budget, I've already done it earlier, what you'll have is then, in the Select Budget drop-down, you'll have not only the monthly budgets, but your named budgets here. So here I've got my Refit 2024. And if I load that, here's all the budgeted amount I've got. There you go, clearly got some expectations for expenditure in administration there for this refit. Basically, what this means is then I can log the budget month or the budget as the Refit 2024 when I add transactions. And that also means that in the reports tab, I can actually then run the budget for the refit. So I'd be able to then compare in the budget to actual the expenditure, the actual expenditure versus what I budgeted for that refit. So hopefully that answers some of the questions we get about budgeting, which isn't actually monthly budget, because this is a really great feature that our dev and product team have just released for us. I'm going to pass over to Georgia now to talk about our remittance advice.
Yeah, so on the platform then, if you're making payments using our Voly Money accounts and our payment platform, then when you make that payment to an invoice, to a supplier, you'll get remittance advice that you're easily able to access in a couple of locations. So if you were to go into your invoices tab, and then you were to click into one of your paid invoices, let me just find one here. So in my paid invoice here, I can click into it. And then I'm able to see down here at the bottom is my remittance advice. And if I was to click that, it would then give me a PDF download of that remittance advice that I could then go on and share with the supplier if they've requested it. To make things a bit easier, because that's a few different steps, you've got to find the remittance advice, you've got to download it, and then you've got to email it on. We're going to make things a bit simpler for you by having automated remittance advice. So that means that it's going to go automatically to the supplier every time you make a payment. So you're not then having to do a follow-up phone call or an email saying, I've sent that payment. So to set this up, it's just a couple of steps before you make that payment to the supplier. Is you'll come to your suppliers or contacts page just here. And then you're going to locate the supplier you want to add the remittance advice automation to. So if we come here, we can find then our supplier, or you can use your filters here to search for it. Once you've located your supplier, nice and easily, click the little I, and that's going to take us straight to that supplier's details. In this area, you've got your usual details that you can fill in to store information here. But then if we look just here, we've got email address for remittance advice. So all you'd need to do then is input the email address for the person that should be receiving that remittance advice at that company. And then the little tick box here to automatically send remittance advice. Once we tick that, the little green indicates there that it's been saved, which means that now next time I send a payment or make a payment to this supplier, that's then automatically going to send that remittance advice. Now, you'll still be able to access it in the usual areas, so back in the invoices and the invoice itself, and also from the banking page, from the payment account, you'll be able to click into it and see it there. But then this saves that extra step, as if you have to send it to that supplier every time you make the payment, having to do it manually. This is also something you'll only have to do once. So you'll input the email address, you'll tick it yes, and then that will remain in place for every payment you make to that supplier until you come and change it or turn this function off on there. So coming back to Joe then for a bit of information on our approvals and the different things we can do with those.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Georgia. What you've just talked about is one of the, I would say, the most popular features that we've introduced in the last 12 months, certainly that automatic remittance advice. So going back to kind of what I do on a daily basis, obviously in implementation, we get to know you at the beginning, and then we also need to talk to you about how you'd like your account set up. And a big part of that is your approval workflow. If you're not a current client, obviously we're very well known for our prepaid cards, but we also have the full invoice suite and the payment suite. And what that means is we need to make sure that the right people are approving those invoices. So just to recap, what I would call the default kind of standard approval workflow that the vast majority of our clients use is normally a crew member would add an invoice, for example. Let's say that that's a sous chef. It then goes to the head of department for approval before going to the captain, and then if necessary, up to an administrator for final approval. Now, there's a lot of things we can do to change that. For example, let's say the head chef has an awful lot of autonomy on board. Actually, the captain doesn't need to approve any invoices unless they're over a certain amount. We can make it that if the sous chef adds it, the head chef can then approve it. Similarly, one of our fairly new features is if you've got a purser on board and you'd like them to approve transactions, we can insert the purser between the head of department and the captain. So then it goes from the crew user to the head of department to purser and then on to captain before it then might go to administrators if needed. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about today is a question that we get quite a lot in our introduction calls, and that's, well, for certain things, I really want a certain person to approve it. And I'll give you the most common example. That would be usually engineering invoices, where actually, let's say Georgia and I work together at a management company. Georgia's the engineer. I know nothing about engineering. If a chief engineer on board adds an invoice with an engineering category, I really want Georgia to approve that because my approval is not enough. I'm not clued up enough. And that's what we call our advanced approval workflow. So essentially, when it's gone through that standard crew approvals, we have the ability to do that on an admin level. And what we can essentially do is we can define two things. Firstly, we can talk to you about which of your expenditure categories you really want that further approval for, and we can do it for as many as is required. And then second, we can actually define the groups of people you want to approve those specifically. So if we've got, let's say, those engineering categories, I could put Georgia alone in my engineering group. And what that would mean is all those engineering categories need Georgia or potentially Georgia's colleagues, if there were more of them, to approve them. We can also have several groups involved. So let's say I've got my engineering team, which is Georgia, but I've also got an owner's rep who I want to approve things that are certain categories as well. So as you can see, it really steps away from that kind of linear approval workflow, which is once it's finished with captain, it goes up to admin. Let me just show you really quickly how this would look. So if we go into my approvals tab, and then I'm going to scroll down to my transactions awaiting approval. So let's just pretend I've added this. And what I've done is, here I've added an invoice for nearly $2,000, and the category there is safety miscellaneous. Now, as always, if I hover over the little I can see where it's up to in terms of the approval workflow here. So as you can see, I have requested this purchase, but currently it's saying approval required by technical approval. So this means actually, because I've set it so Georgia must approve things with safety miscellaneous as the category, I'm not able to approve this even as an administrator. Now, this is the feature that we'd really like to help you set up. So it's not something you can kind of go and set up on the system yourself. All you need to do is just speak to your client relationship manager or perhaps start a live chat on the website now. And it's something we could have a call with you about, because our advanced approvals is something that more and more of our clients are using. So please do get in touch if that's something that interests you. I'm going to pass you over to Georgia now to talk about account revaluations.
Thank you for that, Joe. So yeah, with the advanced approvals, it is something that's really new and taking off. But coming over now to our account revaluation. So at the top of your page, if you're an admin user, you'll notice you've got your journals section just here. Now, if you're an avid user of the system who's using FX a lot, you've got a lot of out of currency payments and invoices, you'll probably be familiar with the journals and inputting your FX corrections on there. So what that means is if you've got an invoice, for example, that you've got the daily rate received from when you've input it as an out of currency invoice, and then you've gone and made a payment, again, in an alternate currency to your vessel's reporting currency, then sometimes that can leave a bit of a gap in terms of the vessel's reporting currency. So maybe the value one day was different to the value that you made the payment on. So you can manually go and add journal entries for those to, correct them. But we've got a brand new tool in the journal section just here. So we've got our invoice revaluation wizard, which is, like I said, when it's an invoice that you've made a payment on and it's got two different conflicting rates on there. And then we've also got the account revaluation wizard. So again, making sure that the rate of your exchange is correct, making sure that in your reports, essentially everything is showing correctly on there. We're not showing as any outstanding balances and there's no discrepancies in that conversion. So this tool then, for both of those, makes it really easy. Rather than you having to, where historically you'd click new journal or account revaluation and you do it one account at a time, with our invoice revaluation wizard, all we do is we click into it. We then need to select our date. Dates on there. Sorry, let me just move myself there slightly. So if we bring it back quite some time, because it is just my demo account, so there's not a huge amount of transactions on there. If you want to do it monthly, you're more than welcome to. You just choose your start date and your end date for your filter, apply the filter, and then you're going to see here all of those invoices that currently have outstanding balances according to your reporting currency. So to break this down a bit for you, we've got our invoice here. We've got the invoice number, the supplier for it, and then the description there as well for you to see really easily. Then we've got our FX balance. So this is based on the currency of the invoice. So you can see all of mine here are in euros. The balance is set to 0 because I've made my payment on them. They're all finished and paid. But in my GBP balance, so in my report, when everything's converted back to the reporting currency of GBP, it's currently saying that for this one, there's still an outstanding balance of £4.73. I've overpaid on this one. So, of course, I want this all to sit at 0 as well, so that the reports are showing nice and accurate, because currently there's nothing owed to me. I don't owe the invoices anything. So by default, the adjustment is then automatically populated for me. So the adjustment amount then brings the final balance to 0 here. Now, if you need to change that balance for any reason, you have the ability to go and do so. But for this one, I'm bringing everything to 0, so it's correct. And then here we've got our cost centers and additional fields as well. So if you did want to apply those to these journal entries, you'd be able to do so using the drop down and the open feature there. Now, finally, you've got your journal option here. So when we create this journal or journals, it's going to create all of those. It's going to apply it to all of the ones selected here. But let's say for any particular reason, you didn't want to include one of the transactions or the invoices on there because you've got a different approach to it for that one, or it's something that you need to look into further. You can simply deselect it. And then when you create that journal, it's then going to create a journal for each of those. And then you'll be able to, again, click into it on there to see a breakdown of the information that's been created for you. So now we can see that it's created individual journal entries to correct those balances for you on there. Now, on the account revaluation tool, similar process, you click to open it. But with this one, we're just going to choose the date we want to revaluate. And then that's today's date. And then we're going to input our journal description here. So I'm going to put on there FX corrections, for example, on that one, just to make it really clear when I'm looking at that journal entry in the future. We've then got here filters. So like with the journals, if you don't want to have certain accounts included, or maybe you want to create one journal for one currency, you can filter by that currency. If you want to only do a journal per account type, you've got the ability to there as well. For this one, I want to bring everything nice and up to date. And again, we can see here, we've got the currency of the account. We've got the name and the type of account just here. And then we've got the balance of that account in the currency of the account. And then the GBP balance, again, my vessel's reporting currency. So it pulls through for me any account that's got a balance in there. It's given me then the FX rate for me to check, and it's pulled from our daily rate. But again, you can change and update this if you've got fixed FX for your accounts, or if you've got a different rate received for an external account on there. We can see here, though, where my account is set to zero balance in euros, I want this to sit to zero on my GBP balance because, of course, in the report, I don't want my balance sheet saying I have a negative balance because it's all zero. So by default, it's pulled through without a rate, an adjustment to bring that account balance to zero. So it works in the exact same way on zero balance accounts as it would with your invoices on there. Again, the ability to filter which accounts are included in this. And then when we click create journal, it's then going to create one new journal entry, including all of those breakdowns for us. So we can see there, clicking into it, all the corrections that have been in place for us. And then if we were to run a report, all those effects would have taken place then onto those reports, and our balances would be updated for that one. So that's it for invoice and the account revaluation wizard tool. If you do need any help at all using that tool, if it's something you're not familiar with, feel free to get in touch with that one as well. But coming back to Joe, and he's going to give us some information on some of the auto functions for the cards.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Georgia. So here I am again on our dashboard. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about relates to our Voly prepaid cards. So I'm going to navigate into the banking tab, and then I'm going to scroll down to the Voly prepaid cards. Now, those of you that are existing clients will already know our cards are prepaid, which just means that when your money lands in the Voly Money account or the prepaid card floats, if you're using them, someone just needs to load those cards. Now, that's completely instant, and you can do that as well in our brand new Voly mobile app. If you've not got it, please search Voly Yachting on the App Store or Google Play Store. And essentially, when the cards are loaded, they can then be used by crew or captain or administrators or whoever. Now, one of the things we get asked an awful lot is there any way to automate that loading of cards or the unloading of cards? And that's what I wanted to talk you through today. Now, one of them you're able to do yourself. So if you're an administrator, you'll see these settings cogs by the prepaid cards. If we click into there, if you navigate from who it's assigned to into the auto unload feature, essentially what this will do is at 11:30 in the evening in the time zone that's been set up for you, the cards will automatically unload. So anything left on the card at 11:30 at night will unload from the card and go back into the Voly Money account. Now, why is that useful? Let's say I'm a fairly small operation and I'm the administrator paying invoices. So if I've had to send 500 euros to the head chef for some things on board, and they've not spent all of it, I don't want to have to go and unload all the cards myself if I need to pay an invoice and I'm coming to being short on money. I just want it to do it automatically. This is a great feature for you because it would mean that each morning, all the cards would be unloaded and everything would be sat in the account ready for me to pay invoices with or to use to load the cards again. So as I say, all you'd need to do there is click enable. The flip side of that is the auto load feature. Now, whilst that's not something you can do on the platform, it's absolutely something that we can do with our banking partner on your behalf. So there's two things we can do there. We can either set a level that you'd like the card to be loaded up to every day. So that happens at midnight. So 11:30, they can be unloaded. And then at midnight, 30 minutes later, they're automatically loaded. So let's say I'd like my head chef to start every day on €1,000. Our banking partner can put that in place. So the card is automatically loaded at midnight with up to €1,000. Okay. We can also do it so it would be loaded with a specific amount each day, as opposed to getting to a certain limit each day. If you'd like, for example, €100 to be added each day, obviously that would then mean the balance would go up and up and up if it wasn't being spent. So the most common one is to get it loaded to a limit of a certain amount each day. If you'd like that to be in place, please do reach out to your client relationship manager, because it's something we do get asked more and more, and it's something we can absolutely do. Finally, we do sometimes get asked whether we can disable ATM use with the card so that nobody can withdraw cash on using the Voly prepaid card. Also, that's something we can do in the background for you. So if you're an operation that really does not want cash on board, as more and more of our clients are saying to us, please do get in touch, because we can disable that for you. So now I'm just going to pass back to Georgia, who will talk about something fairly new on our APA platform.
Yeah, so we're changing pace slightly. We're on the orange platform, which has some of our clients who use both platforms will know. This means we're on the APA side of the system. So with the APA platform, as most of you, again, who have been using the APA platform will know, there's a bit of setup to be done before each and every charter to make sure that the funds are showing correctly and that we're getting a valid and up-to-date value of remaining funds to each charter guest. Now, if you've been with us for some time, you'll know that this used to be a few different steps. It would be a case of creating a cost center, creating a client account, and then a couple of additional steps on top of that. So we've made that process really simple by creating what we call the APA widget here. So it's a new tile on your homepage, and it looks like this. When you're ready to start getting ready for your next charter, all you have to do is click New Charter. The system's then going to ask you for your charter name. So as always, making it really specific to your guest. So I'm going to say Smith, and I'm going to say that they're coming on board tomorrow. So the 29th of the 8th, and then staying until the 6th of the 9th. Sorry if you're not in the UK and that's not the way you order your dates, but that's the way I'm doing it today. Then we've got our APA amount here. So this is how much is contracted with the guest. So as dictated by the contract, we're going to then input this full value here that we're expecting them to send over to us. So for me, here at Voly, we run very cheap charters. It's a low €600 on that one. We've then got here our funding source, so which account the money is going to be shown as coming from. So when you use the drop down, it's always one of your funding sources set up on the account. So you can see here, I've got adjustment central agent. Yours might say something along the lines of charter broker. It might even be the management name, but it's that account there anyway. Central agent, charter broker, management name for that one. Then we're going to click Add Charter, and that brings together all of those steps of your initial funds in, your creating of the cost center, your creation of the client account, and then it's going to show it just here as well. So not only does it bring together all of those steps to save you some time, it also then allows you to quickly reference how much is remaining on that APA account for that guest. So there's still a couple more steps you would have to do before you're ready to start the charter. So of course, processing the real funds into the account to tie them to that charter. But instead of having to then, during the charter, keep running reports to see the balance, you've got quick reference here, and that just saves you those times on setting up on the account. So if it is you're getting ready the day before, you're not worrying about have you missed a step, have you done something? It's really clear and easy to see on there. If you can't currently see this APA widget and you want to be able to and use it, please do not hesitate to get in touch with your client relationship manager, because again, it's something we'll set up for you, but then once it's enabled, you'll have access to on the system. Heading back to Joe now for some information on restricting views.
Thanks, Georgia. So back to the dashboard. What I'm going to talk to you about now relates to transaction visibility. So essentially, if we recap, by default, users are able to see transactions they have added themselves or ones which are tagged to their department. So let's say I'm that sous chef. I can see any transactions I've added, but also any transactions that my fellow chefs or my boss, the head chef, have added with the galley department tagged to it. Okay. Captains by default can see all the invoices on the system or transactions, and obviously administrators, absolutely, you can see everything. Now, one of the things we get asked is, though, you might want to actually fully restrict certain categories where no crew at all can see them, or only certain departments can see it, and there's absolutely no risk of that occurring. Now, that's something we can absolutely do. And the two most common examples would be management fees, if you don't perhaps want the crew to know what that is, and also crew payroll, because obviously if you've got two rotational captains, you really don't want one to see all transactions on the system, including the other one's salary. So let me show you just how easily you can change that. So from the dashboard, if you're an administrator, when you click onto the settings cogs, and then you have access to the expenditure categories, what you'll see here is a list of all the expenditure category groups, and then if we were to expand, you'd see all the individual groups and the codes. It really is as simple as ticking and unticking these boxes. So if you look down, this is a very well set up account. Obviously, the crew payroll has been hidden from all of these departments, which means my two rotational captains are not going to have any problems with each other because they can't see any of the payroll invoices. As an administrator, I can, and currently the accounts department I've got on board as well can see it. Let's say I want to change it. I simply click, I get the green feedback to tell me that that's been done correctly. But if that's unticked, you can be safe at that the crew in that department cannot see any transactions at all. That's not only invoices, that's any transactions at all logged with that against the category. If that's something you'd like some help with, please do just let us know, because we'd be happy to talk you through that as well. That was a fairly quick one, so I'm just going to pass you back to Georgia to talk about our attachment downloads.
Yeah, so one of the biggest questions I get asked, especially from admins or from reps from the owners' teams, is around downloading attachments. So are you able to download the attachments that are uploaded by the crew in terms of receipts and invoices and things like that? And the question is, answer is absolutely with that one. Anything you can see on the system, you're able to download in terms of attachments and information. So if we were to take a look, for example, at our invoices, when you click into the invoices tab, you can then see your invoice information just here. And at the very end, you can see then the view receipt button. So you click that, you'll then see the attachments to that transaction, and you'll click the download button. And that means you've downloaded that transaction attachment just like so. If you don't want to do it on an individual basis, going through each and every one, you've got the button down here at the bottom to download view as zip. So that means that you'll get a zip file of the Excel spreadsheet breakdown of information, as well as all the attachments for what you can see here. So if you're running a filter, when you filter it, it'll be the filtered attachments. And if you're running a report, you'll also be able to see it in there as well on the transaction detail report. So because you can do that for each and every account, if you want to get those on a monthly basis, maybe you don't want to go into each and every bank account, which is somewhere else you'll be able to do those same functions. The easiest way to do it for a monthly basis from across the platform is in this transaction detail report right here. So you'll select your date range then as a month, and then you'll be able to see here my date type. I'm choosing invoice date, but you'll be able to choose for the date paid or budget type as well. And then when I view that report, it's pulling through all the transactions from across the platform between these two dates. So absolutely everything, regardless of whether it was an invoice, a card payment, a cash payment, all of those transactions. And then at the bottom, again, I've got the download as zip as an option, so I can download everything for that month. Very quickly, it's something you can also do on the APA account as well. So if you were to run the reports on there, either the transaction detail report or the APA detail report, view the report against your relevant charter guest, and at the bottom, again, download as zip. So if you have got a client that really wants to get go for everything with a fine-tooth comb and see all of their attachments and all of their receipts from the charter, you've got that ability to do it in one easy folder. So last for Joe's final question, we've got on there, it's coming through to him.
Thank you very much, Georgia. So if we go back to the dashboard, what I was going to talk to you about now relates to our Voly prepaid cards, because it's so common for our clients to have rotational crew. We often get asked about how approvals works on the cards. If there's only one card with chief stewardess on it, but perhaps you've got two chief stews, and when they rotate, you need the other user to be able to approve transactions with that card. So I just wanted to talk to you about two things. Firstly, if you go into the banking tab again as an admin and you scroll down to the prepaid cards and you see our settings cogs, this is something you can do yourself. So when you click onto there, the first thing you'll see is who that card is assigned to. And what that allows you to do is change that. So let's say we've got 2 captains there, as you can see. When they rotate, I can reassign my one single captain card to a different user. And what that would mean is that then, if that captain is making any online purchases at all, when it gets to the stage where they need to approve it, all they need to do is log in, and then let me show you what pops up. This was me earlier trying to get away from the UK weather, even though it's August, booking myself a quick trip with Etihad. Basically, when you're on the Voly platform, as soon as you log in, if you've been prompted by the merchant to approve the transaction, you would log in and you would see this. So that new captain, the one that I've just reassigned the card to, can enter the password, simply accept the purchase. Next thing you know, that's all gone through and I'm jetting off to Abu Dhabi. Obviously, it goes without saying, if you don't recognize the purchase, always click decline. But yeah, that's something really useful because lots of our clients talk about having rotational crew and not wanting every crew member to have their own named card. So that's how you can do that yourself. So finally, I'll pass back to Georgia to talk about audit trails.
Yes, so this is the final question we've got scripted for you, and I'll try and be as quick as I can because I'm aware we're approaching the half-an-hour mark. So with audit trails then, that's a huge question, is how can I check who's done what on the system? The answer is yes, you can check where to find who's actioned things, who's added things. There's lots of different locations across the platform where you can see that information. So I'm only going to give you the highlights now, but if there's specific information you ever want to have a audit trail for, just feel free to get in touch and we'll tell you where to find it. So the highlights are the system-driven comments on transactions. So anytime a transaction's approved, it will then have a system-driven comment with a date on there, timestamp, and then also a comment from the person who's made that authorization or approval on it. So if you come to any transactions awaiting approval or invoices that are finalized in approval, and you've got the comments here, you click into it and you can see there, anything in green is going to be a system-driven comment and approval. And then anything underneath is then going to be our manual comment added by the same person on there. We've also got other key system-driven comments, including when the OK to pay button is marked as OK to pay. So when you've got the little green button here, and when invoices are marked as reviewed, they're all going to generate system-driven comments that can't be changed by the person who's made those on there. So if we were to then say the transaction's not OK to pay, you'd have another comment saying it's marked as not OK to pay, and it would keep the original, and then it would create another one on there. Other ones include the transactions themselves. So this is the same for any transactions, cash, card. I'm just using invoices as our example today. But if we click into an invoice, you'll always be able to see who added it and when. So again, date, timestamp can't be altered. You've then got last edited by. So if any changes have been made to it, you'll be able to see who did the last change and when. But also a brand new feature is our version save. So anytime an edit's made, it generates a version that you'll then be able to click using this button. And again, here at the top, you've got a breakdown seeing version 1, who made that one, who edited it, version 2, who made that change on there. So you can always click back to see those previous versions on there. Now, although you can't restore them, you can see the information included. So then you can go back and update the original or the updated invoice there on the system. Other places to find audit trails include reconciliations. They're always date and time stamped, journal entries, and finally, another good one I've just remembered is our deleted items. So if somebody has deleted something on the platform, a new feature is our deleted items folder, and that will always then have, again, who it was added by, who it was deleted by, so you can get a clear picture of what's happened there. So if it's the same person created it and then deleted it 10 minutes later, it's highly likely, they've made a mistake on that one. Or if there's, something that's a bit more differentiation on there, you'll be able to see information around that as well. But that's it for audit trails for now, just because I'm very conscious of our time and I've done enough speaking on there. But is there any questions that anybody has for us on that or anything we've mentioned today?
So just while we're having a read through those questions, just before we answer, I'll just quickly share this, which is our next webinar, which will be in a fortnight's time. And so that's going to be my colleagues Henry and James in our Treasury and Payments desk, because they are going to talk to you about some best practices and tips on how you can use Voly if you're making those out of currency payments, and what we're able to do in-house for you. So if you are interested, please do sign up by going online or asking us for the sign up link. You'll see it going out very shortly. Georgia, I think I'll start with one question, which I think was for me, it related to applications. And then I think there were a couple for you about the remittance advice. So the first question we've had, firstly, I'll start by saying, obviously, because applications, when we refer to applications, we talk about the opening of Voly Money accounts and the ordering of cards can be so different for each client. It's probably something where, I won't say the name out loud, but I will get in touch to maybe arrange a call privately to discuss your kind of exact concerns or questions. But I think the question related to kind of the process for opening them. Now, I'll just quickly, briefly explain. It all depends on where the money is coming from. So if you're a management company and we already work with you, you already are approved to send funds to Voly. The process for opening Voly Money accounts and ordering cards is a lot quicker. The information we need is a lot less. Now, if you would like, for example, to bring a boat on and you'd like the family office to be funding that directly, we've never worked with the family office before. Obviously, that bar is higher for the family office because we do have to go through know your customer checks for them. Once they're approved, if then they brought on another boat, obviously it's the same thing, it's a lot quicker. There have been a couple of changes recently with that, so I understand there might be a couple of further questions there. So as I say, I will definitely reach out and we can talk about that maybe privately. Thank you.
Yeah, so one of the questions we've got there in regards to remittance advice is, does this work on batch payments too? And the answer is absolutely. Anywhere the system would normally generate your remittance advice, including batch payments, if you set it to automate it, automatically send it to a client, or a supplier, it's then automatically going to send it on there. The second part of that question is, can you include multiple email addresses for that remittance advice? And the answer is currently, at the moment, no, it's just one single email address on there, but you still have the access to go and download it and send it manually. But if that's something that you would be interested in seeing in the future, then it's something we can definitely suggest to our dev team to hopefully look at improving and having more email addresses availability on there. I think I saw this one come through in terms of, can you tag multiple departments? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was in regards to, Joe, when you were talking about restricting through view, how we can also automatically have departments tagged, then they can see it. Again, at the moment, it is just one single department, but you can change user access, so they're able to see more of the system. So if it was a case of instead you wanted them to be able to see all invoices, and maybe you wanted to then just restrict expenditure categories, so they should be able to see it regardless of which department it's tagged to, but actually any invoices or transactions that include these categories, maybe that's a better way to go about it, rather than trying to have several departments tagged. Having that department user be able to see everything and then restrict it based on the category might be a better option in that instance on there. I think that's all the questions that we can answer on this one. As Joe mentioned, there's been a couple that have come through that we can't answer over the webinar, just because it's very client specific, and we'll get in touch with those people to arrange a call. But yeah, I think that's everything from us.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time this Wednesday afternoon. It's been a real pleasure from both of us. And like I said, in a fortnight's time, we look forward to seeing all of you on our Treasury team webinar. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your days.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.